Captain, we have them. We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Transporter Lock that is not about a particular episode. I'm the Chief of Engineering, Ken Gagney, and joining me is my Captain, Sabriel Maston. Hello, Sabriel.
Hi, Ken. Welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to serve with you and for you.
That's right. This is weird, Ken. For the first time in 2 months, we have to go back to the days of not having new Star Trek to watch.
I know, we endured this feeling for about 12 years, and I really don't want to go back to that.
Oh, it's cold and scary, just like space.
I feel a little lost in space, it's true. But we have plenty of content to fill the space because Star Trek Discovery left us with a lot of questions.
Yeah, it did. Wow. Yeah. We had a number of things were answered, but we've got a lot of questions.
I mean, of course, it ended on a cliffhanger, so there will be questions that we won't know the answers to until the show returns to the air on January 7th. But in the meantime, I think we can certainly theorize about what has happened and what will happen.
Oh, for sure. And this is half the fun of Star Trek speculation.
So we have had quite a few questions come into Transporter Lock via both Reddit and email, and we'd like to take this opportunity to answer some listener questions about Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, let's just hop right into it.
Great. So let's start with this one. This one comes from our frequent listener, NMR Jess. This is more of a broad topic about Star Trek Discovery as opposed to any particular character or plot. She's asking, quite a lot of time has passed since Gene Roddenberry died. If there is a greater Star Trek mission statement, how is Discovery fitting into Roddenberry's vision? Now that's a good question because TNG, of course, and TOS were both created to address societal issues of the day and to represent what Roddenberry thought humanity would eventually attain in their quest toward perfection and exploration. For example, we rarely saw internal strife among the crew. We had figured out as a humanity how to get along. And it wasn't until after Roddenberry died and we created DS9 that we actually started seeing internal strife. So that was sort of a deviation from his path. So the question is, does Discovery stick to that path, or if it diverts, how does it do so?
Oh, it does not stick to Roddenberry's vision at all. He had this idea by the time of TOS, humans have reached basically utopia. We can see that right away in Discovery. That is not the case at all. Star Trek has always been about embracing humanity and discovering oneself compared to others. People find their own humanity against others, or even sharing Earth's humanity with other races. After Gene Roddenberry died, the series started looking within as well, especially Deep Space Nine and Enterprise to a little bit and Voyager to a little bit, but Deep Space Nine and Discovery, to me, have the most internal strife. We are trying to figure ourselves out, and in Gene's world, we didn't have to figure ourselves out, or for the most part. And I don't think this holds with his vision of Star Trek at all.
Now, Roddenberry died halfway through the production of TNG, so you could make an argument about certain later episodes.
Oh, no, the people who took over, the showrunners who took over TNG, totally changed things around, too.
Right, but I was going to say about TOS, which is unfortunately the only live-action Star Trek that was wholly produced with Roddenberry's oversight. I'm not sure even that was necessarily utopia, because you could make the argument that Dr. McCoy was pretty racist about green-blooded hobgoblins.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunately more of a sign of the times, like when it was produced. A lot of TOS's storylines were, what's the anachronism? Is that the right word?
Sure.
Anachronistic? Yeah, that's what I said. I don't know what you heard. Must be Skype problems.
Are there any aspects of Roddenberry's vision that Discovery does adhere to?
Humanity still does try to, or even Starfleet, Federation, tries to be the better person, but I don't think it's the utopia that he envisioned.
I don't know that a utopia is necessarily realistic. I mean, for example...
Oh, no, it's not.
Right, but we had Burnham, who grew up with no birth parents because they were murdered by a Klingon raiding party or something, Klingon terrorists, And then, of course, she's going to experience trauma as a result of that. And she's going to grow up to be a flawed human being. And she's going to make bad decisions, like knocking out her own captain and trying to fire on a Klingon ship. So I don't know how you could have a utopia in a world where we have to get along with other people who may want to hurt us. I mean, humanity does not evolve in a vacuum.
No, it doesn't work at all. And that's why I think people in later years realize this has to change. Mm-hmm. And even then, even with your example, it's Klingons and other Vulcans doing the harm, not humans.
Which, of course, we didn't see at the end of Enterprise either, the penultimate episode where RoboCop takes over the laser on Mars and fires it at Earth.
Right.
That very much showed the growing pains that humanity was encountering as they encountered other alien species, and not all those pains were necessarily inflicted by the aliens. One thing I've heard said about Discovery is, even though it's set after Enterprise, it's still sort of like halfway between where we are today and the Next Generation, which was probably the most utopic Star Trek we've seen. And Discovery sort of shows us halfway to that point, where it's still very much us who we are today and the challenges that we face as a people, but sort of on the path to overcoming those challenges. We're encountering them and we're facing them head on in the hopes that we'll make it to that utopia.
Oh, for sure. I would even say there's an argument that even though I know it's just a few years before TOS, it almost feels like a halfway point between Enterprise and TOS. Not because of technology difference, it just feels so different from TOS.
Certainly, it was made in a different era with different production values and different budgets.
Right. But I mean, even just the values of the crew, it just feels different.
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, this is only 10 years before TOS, and TOS seems like they have a better handle on things than you would expect in just 10 years of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks for the question, NMR Jess.
So from Reddit, we have Ashland Road Warrior, who asks, where the F are the Andorians? He's more colorful language.
Just like the Andorians are colorful.
Yeah, like, double dumbass on you. No. I mean, we're the 21st century. We have colorful language. Anyway, where are the Andorians? That's a good question. They are my favorite Star Trek race, and I would love to see more than just their spacesuits. Discovery. We don't know. I think we have heard that other races that were Tellarites and Andorians will be featured in Discovery in the future. What does that mean? Season 2? Does that mean other half of Season 1? I don't know. But they're out there. Starfleet seems to be more of a human-centric division of the Federation. For whatever reason, Starfleet has always seemed more human-centric. It could be different, but, production of a television show made for humans, sort of like that. But in the Star Trek universe, it seems like it's a human-based space agency for the most part. For all we know, there are ships of other races out there exploring from, other races in the Federation. The Vulcans have their own ship. We know that from Deep Space Nine. But we don't really know what happened to, the Andorian Expeditionary Force, or whatever they call it. What do they call themselves again? I'm drawing a blank, but the Andorian Space Agency. We don't know where they are in the 24th century, let alone where they are in the 23rd century.
You're right that we do see mostly humans in Starfleet, and probably the budget is part of that because it's easier to represent a human than anything else. But I also think humans were the driving force behind the creation of the Federation, even though the Vulcans, Andorians, and Tellarites were co-signatories. I don't think it ever would have happened without the humans.
Oh, no.
I can imagine a world where Tellarites didn't exist and the Federation was still founded. I can't imagine a world where humans didn't exist and the Federation was still founded.
For sure.
But as for where they are, I don't know. They were everywhere on Enterprise, which is about 90 years before this show. We did see an Andorian space helmet being worn by Harry Mudd. So there's that. And you made some comparisons to Paul Stamets and the Anar from Enterprise last week.
Yeah, whether that is related or not, or just coincidence, hopefully we will find out.
Although one person on Reddit likened Stamets' eyes less to the Anar and more to Gary Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. Gary Mitchell had in, was it called Charlie X? Was the episode in Enterprise TOS? The second episode, I think?
Weren't there, no, I think there were 2 episodes of TOS where people gained remarkable powers. I think Charlie X was one of them, and that was about a young boy named Charlie Evans.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you.
Gary Mitchell was in, I think it was the second episode of the show or something. It was Lieutenant Commander Gary Mitchell in the episode where no man has gone before.
Okay, yeah, I was just mixing the two.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising that they would be confused because the episodes are very similar.
I actually saw James's middle initial was something else.
Although there was this amazing TOS X-Men crossover where Charlie X and Proteus from the Marvel Universe joined forces into like one super being that could just reshape reality. It was amazing.
Q.
L?
No, it sounds like Q.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Q can do whatever he wants. But he does it, and he's awesome at it, and he's hilarious. Charlie and Gary were never that awesome.
No, they weren't.
I think we've answered that question. Let's go on to the next one. Here is a very insightful question from NMR Jess. She says, at the end of the mid-season finale, given the location of the ship and who is aboard, who is the greater threat to the crew, Lorca or L'Rell? So this is very interesting because we don't know where the ship is, and there may be a lot of external threats there, but we suspect that they were brought there by Lorca. He punched in those unknown coordinates for that last jump that Stamets powered. And we don't know what his intentions are. If he's just trying to go home, which is what he said just before the jump. He said, let's go home, which is odd because the starbase they were supposed to be going to isn't home, per se. So we may be somewhere closer to wherever Lorca comes from, which this might not even be Lorca. And we don't know what L'Rell's intentions are. We don't know if she cares deeply for Ash or if she hates him. We don't know if Ash is Vogue. We don't know where Vogue is, and we'll get to that later. There are a lot of unknown variables regarding these two characters' intentions, and it's hard to say who is more of a threat. I think you also need to ask yourself a threat to whom, because I think Burnham is absolutely safe with Lorca. I think for some reason he is very invested in her safety. For what reason, I don't know. Maybe he will off her at some later point and try to replace her with a changeling. I don't know. But so far he has demonstrated great interest in her safety. So as for the ship as a whole, it's hard to say who's the greater threat. What do you think, Bree?
I think it's going to be L'Rell. Well, Lorca seems to be devious and has his own agenda. I still think he cares about his crew. Well, we possibly put a ship in danger. I guess we don't really know. I think L'Rell is the bigger threat because of whatever she represents, and we know that Tyler's got some kind of hidden agenda, whether he realizes it or not. So I think it's L'Rell. She's up to something.
But see, L'Rell escaped with Vogue earlier in the season in order to prime him to lead this holy war and reunite the Klingon houses. But that effort has been pretty much destroyed in the last episode where the Ship of the Dead and Cole were both exploded by Discovery. Even if Vogue now reemerges and reveals himself, there isn't a war effort for him to lead anymore because I think Starfleet won the war.
Yeah, I just started kind of thinking about it. Vogue must eventually be successful.
Successful at what?
At bringing the houses together.
Because of how we see the Klingons in later episodes?
Yeah, if he is on Discovery. They must get back, or at least he does. But that doesn't really answer. The question is, who's the greater threat to this crew right now? But
you're sticking with the answer L'Rell is?
I think it's L'Rell.
I think Lorca is the bigger threat at this time. I mean, remember, he put Cornwell in harm's way in order to get her abducted by the Klingons. I think he did it intentionally, but he knew that there were valid reasons to send her on that diplomatic mission as well, and he didn't necessarily know it would go south. But nonetheless, she has now been rescued. She has been sent off Discovery, so she's back at Starfleet headquarters getting surgery, and she expects to make a full recovery. She has the dirt on Lorca. She had said that she's going to make sure that he loses his ship and that he gets the help he needs. So if Discovery goes back to Federation space, he is going to lose his captaincy, and that might be a good reason why he warped them somewhere else, because he's not ready to give up his ship. I think he will do anything to keep his ship, and I think that as long as that is the case, he is the bigger threat.
So perhaps could be turned into short-term Lorca, long-term L'Rell.
That's right. Hopefully they'll both be around for several seasons. I hope L'Rell isn't just like the seasonal big bad, and we're going to have somebody different every season like we did with Buffy or The Flash.
Yeah.
We will see.
Another question from Reddit. We have El Sabor Asiatico, the Asian flavor or the Asian taste.
Oh my.
There's very many ways one could take that. But anyway, they want to know, where the heck is Discovery now? What is the wreckage they jumped into the middle of? And did Lorca jump them there on purpose? Well, the last one we know Lorca jumped somewhere on purpose. Whether it's this exact spot, we don't know if that's on purpose.
Even if you freeze frame the part where he inputs the coordinates, it says unknown coordinates. Maybe he made a random jump just to avoid going home and losing a ship.
Yeah, he might have just done the equivalent of just smashing buttons on the phone.
That's right. The same way we got Q*bert's sound. They were unable to make a specific voice or word be said, so they just jammed a bunch of wires together and you got Q*bert's sound. Maybe that's the same thing with Discovery.
Hey, Ken, how about every time I swear you find the Q*bert sound and put it in front of whatever I say?
I'm sorry, my Q*bertese is a little rusty. So we think Lorca jumped them there on purpose, but where are they?
Saru said that he could not figure it out. And, in past when ships have gone to alternate dimensions or realities, for whatever reason, space has been relatively constant. They know where they are. They're able to figure it out. Even like in the mirror universe. Apparently, space is fairly constant no matter which reality you are in, more or less. But when you go to, I'm thinking maybe they're in a different galaxy. They couldn't figure it out. They could not figure out where they were based on stars.
Yeah, and you're right. When the DS9 runabout first went to the Mirror Universe, they knew where they were. And when Voyager went to the Delta Quadrant, they knew where they were and how long it would take to get home.
Yeah, and DS9, when they went to Gamma Quadrant, they knew where they were.
Oh, that's right. Yes, good point. So for Saru to not have any idea, to not have any point of reference for the constellations and the stars to identify where they are now, they must be somewhere very strange. And for that to happen, normally we can tell as viewers just by looking out the port window that they are somewhere strange. I mean, there were plenty of times where the Enterprise D on TNG went where no one had gone before, and you saw clouds of astral matter floating around the ship and even passing through the ship that looked like no known space properties would behave. And we don't see that here. This looks like normal space, but a part of normal space we've never seen. So I think your suggestion that it may be a different galaxy could be spot on.
Yeah, it doesn't, nothing seems to take away from that, but it doesn't fit everything perfectly. But hey, some evidence fits that, so.
If it was another dimension like fluidic space, again, that has very different properties. This is not fluidic space.
Right, so that's one possibility. Unless they're in a holodeck.
The whole ship warped into a holodeck?
Yeah.
Oh, God. What is the wreckage that they jumped into the middle of?
That is another good question. We have no idea. I could not figure out any ships that have more red paint than anything.
In the Starfleet universe, as we discussed, it could be
in the
Firefly.
known universe. Yeah.
The known universe.
Heck, oh yeah, even Voyager knew that they were on a Christmas tree.
Wait, what?
One of a Q turned them into a Christmas ornament.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it might have been with Quinn. Was it Quinn?
Oh.
He's trying to hide them.
Ah, that's hilarious. What?
Yeah, he's trying to hide the ship, and he put them on a Christmas ornament, just like Hallmark makes every year.
That's awful. Where was the tree? Whose tree was it?
I don't recall, but Q was the one who found the ornament and picked it up and looked right in the view screen.
I love it. That is fantastic. So I don't think they are surrounded by Christmas ornaments, as seasonal as that would be. When I do a Google search for Red Ship Star Trek, the hits aren't very helpful. It says that in Star Trek Into Darkness, there was a Red Federation ship. Also, for some reason, the Jellyfish comes up. Oh, that is Spock's ship, which had the red matter. So the ship itself was not red. It was just carrying red matter.
I hadn't really noticed it until this moment, until this happened in the show, where, most ships either have silver or gray or gold as there are variations on those three colors. I wonder if that's a production reason, they stand out more, or if they just hadn't thought about it. Like Cardassians are gold, Ferengi are gold orange, and so on.
I don't know. I don't know why that might be.
It might stand out better on the old TVs, and then just stuck with it.
Maybe it's just like team colors. Like my high school colors were the blue and gold.
Oh, right. Oh, and green, of course. Klingons and Romulans have both had green ships.
That's right. And we suspect one bought the cloaking technology from the other, so maybe they had to sign a licensing deal where they couldn't change the brand colors.
You have to fly our advertisements for a while, 23 years.
Exactly. That's right. Just like on the side of your taxi or whatever. I don't think we'll know the answers to these questions about where they are and why until next season or next half season. We will find the answers. Everything till then is just sort of conjecture.
All right, so NMR Jess has another question. And this one, it might be tough and potential trigger warning for sexual assault and torture. It may not get that bad, but I just want to warn you, just in case. But the subject of Ash's flashbacks, his trauma seems to be both from sexual assault and torture, based on what we saw in his visions. If he is actually Voke, does that change some of the context of his flashbacks? And this is the tough one. Do you have any thoughts?
As you said, the popular fan theory is that Ash Tyler is secretly the Klingon Vogue. It seems like if that is the case, Tyler might not even be aware of it. So he may be remembering having sex with L'Rell as Vogue, because we detected some sort of a chemistry between those two Klingons. But since he doesn't know that he's Vogue, he may be misremembering it as non-consensual sex. And in the context of torture, was he tortured, or was that just some sort of extreme cosmetic surgery to make him look human? I don't know. Also, Ash Tyler has an actual Starfleet record, so I don't know that necessarily Vogue has been physically altered to become Ash. I think it's likelier that Vogue's memories were somehow imprinted into Tyler's brain, and there's the barrier between those two personalities is starting to break down. They're bleeding into each other. And so suddenly he's remembering all these things that aren't his own memories. And when they mingle with his 6 months of imprisonment on the Klingon ship, then he starts to get confused about what it is he's remembering and the context. So we don't know exactly what he's seen because we're only seeing it from his tortured, fractured perspective. It's hard to say what the reality of what happened to him is.
Right. I think if he does turn out, if Ash and Vogue turn out to be the same person, I think you've hit it spot on. And he's remembering it one way when it maybe happened a different way for Vogue.
But Jess brings up the point that we have in our own media and our own culture right now a lot of people coming forward about sexual assault and sexual harassment. Should we believe Tyler's memories?
Yeah.
Does it matter what actually happened if his impression of what happened and the way he feels about it doesn't change? And that's really tricky because we don't have any real world analog by which to address such a complicated situation.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to Ash, it was real, so I think it is real. I mean, whether it happened or not, to Ash, it was real, so it happened.
I mean, I'm sort of reminded of the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Total Recall, which is my most familiar interpretation of the Philip K. Dick novel. I haven't actually read it. But he found himself, his character, in all these situations that his past self had purposely set up and then had his own memory erased. So he was sort of like his own antagonist. He was fighting these plans that he himself had created, but which he didn't recall because it was an entirely different personality that had set them up. And so who knows how many personalities are in Tyler's head right now and what they have conspired to make happen in the present and whether the current incarnation of these characters agrees with those previous intentions.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And L'Rell's house is full of spies and whatnot. It's very possible they could have faked records for Ash Tyler. Because Tyler never got to go back to any other location. No other Starfleet base or no other ship. So it's possible.
That is true. Nobody from his past has confronted him and confirmed or denied his own existence.
Yeah.
It's all records. That's all they have to go by.
And Lorca just took it at face value. So, I mean, it very well could be that he is or was a real person. It's just we can't rule out that something fishy happened.
If I was going to promote somebody to Chief of Security, I would want to check their references.
Yeah, and he did. He mentions that when they were on the holodeck shooting Klingons. By
checking references, do you mean like he talked to people who had worked with him?
Oh, I was thinking records. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, he doesn't talk about that. I think he said he looked into him.
He didn't say, give me the names and numbers of 3 people who would speak well on your behalf. I got to do a background check.
Well, Harry Mudd, L'Rell.
I'm sorry, L'Rell is currently inaccessible. Do you have somebody else? So I think we've addressed that question as best we can. NMR Jess also asked a separate question, where is Voke? And I think we kind of addressed that. So we can mark that off our list.
If he is not here, he's going to have a completely different subplot come the next season, or next half season, which takes place back in wherever they are in Klingon territory.
Right, who knows what he could be doing during all this time. I mean, L'Rell did say he'd have to give up everything, and I think if he is Tyler, then he has given up everything, including his own sense of self.
Yeah, everything seems to fit for the Tyler connection, but it's not a guarantee.
I also don't think Voke is competent enough to be doing anything without L'Rell's help.
I also agree. He was very much a, what's the word I'm looking for? A follower. And then, so suddenly, all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, haha, I had it within me all along.
I don't think he ever expected T'Kuvma to be assassinated and for himself to elevate to a leadership role. I think he was caught totally unprepared for that, and L'Rell was a lifesaver in that respect. But the idea that he's back doing something else while L'Rell is potentially in a different galaxy doesn't seem likely.
Right.
That was a very serious question that we just addressed, so let's answer this one from Akbar56 on Reddit, who asks, how does Lorca keep his Tribble population under control?
Well, this is easy. You just don't feed it.
Can they survive without being fed, though?
You feed it. You don't feed it. You don't give it abundant amounts of food.
Because it was the excessive access to grain that caused the Tribbles in TOS to multiply so out of control.
Right.
So as long as you keep them away from limitless food and all-you-can-eat buffets, you're saying that you can have just one Tribble and it'll be just one Tribble.
Yeah, it's very normal. I think even Dr. Phlox had one.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Scotty had one in the 2009 movie.
Right, so you're okay if you have one Tribble. And you take care of it well and don't overfeed it. Something we have, I don't think we brought up the entirety of all these episodes, is Lorca has a fortune cookie company in his past history. And he keeps a bowl of fortune cookies on his desk.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. He keeps both a Tribble and a large supply of food on the same table.
Well, but they're not next to each other. I don't know. Maybe Tribbles don't move very fast.
But they could probably locomote to the other side of the table and nibble on some fortunes.
Eventually. Maybe fortune cookies are not good for their metabolism.
I don't know. I just want to see an episode where Lorca walks in and he reaches for a dish of fortune cookies. Instead, he grabs a Tribble. Because that's all that's in the dish now because they ate them all. I mean, somebody else on Reddit even asked, what happens if Lorca has a midnight snack craving and he reaches for a fortune cookie and goes to the wrong side of the desk and gets a Tribble?
Well, it means he'd be sleeping standing up.
That's true, which, you have standing desks. Maybe in the future they have standing beds.
They do on the space station. It's something we've never talked about. Is there any meaning behind Lorca's fortune cookie, his past?
Well, we don't ever get to see the fortunes in the cookies, right?
No, but he will grab them when he's contemplating something on like what to do. I mean, that's often the case is when he's thinking about what's next. I wonder if there is some kind of connection or implication there. I'm going to have to watch for that when I do a rewatch of the series here.
Didn't he offer one to Burnham and say, don't you want to help end the war you started? Here's a fortune cookie.
Possibly.
I think that happened down in engineering when he first demonstrated to her the spore drive.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I was once in the British farce Up and Running, a stage play, and my character had a nervous habit where whenever he was feeling stressed out, he'd reach into his attaché and pull out a bag of marshmallows and just start chowing down. So maybe Lorca has a similar character flaw where he needs to have fortune cookies around.
Like Jelly Babies, like the Doctor.
Exactly. I mean, this is a guy with his dependencies. He has to put shots in his eyes. He has to eat fortune cookies. He has to stroke his Tribble. He is constantly stressed out.
Whoa.
That's not a metaphor. You pet your dog, it's so soft and you just want to, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, at least he doesn't have a beagle.
It's true.
Although I kind of wish he did.
I like Porthos.
Me too.
Even evil Porthos.
Oh, was there one in the Mirror Universe?
He was a Rottweiler.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. That's hilarious. I thought that was a great addition to the crew, the good Porthos.
Oh, totally.
So that was the question from Reddit on how does Lorca keep his population under control. Let's go to another question from NMR Jess.
I like how this is phrased. Can we talk about how amazing Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz are? I agree, totally. They're so adorable together. They're so sweet and so cute, and I love them.
Oh, go on. I read this whole question. I like the way it's written.
Do we want to embarrass her? I don't know if this is embarrassing or not.
Oh, yes, we want to go there.
Okay, she says she could watch their kiss on loop because it's so beautiful. However, it does go on to some more serious parts too. That the huge support and love that Anthony Rapp has shared because of his assault story. Also, huge support and love to Anthony Rapp after he's sharing his sexual assault story and during the height of the show's popularity, and that his accusations were immediately heard and addressed is awesome. And she kind of also wonders, was he only able to do this because of the popularity of the show? And it's possible. I don't know if I really knew Anthony Rapp before Star Trek. I know a number of people did because he was in Rent. That's where a lot of people know him from. But I don't know how many people would have heard otherwise, unless it was, if he hadn't been on Star Trek, it might have been just someone makes this accusation, because like so many cases, it's a woman has come up accusing so-and-so of doing this thing, but they don't really get much limelight. So I don't know if it would have had the same weight if he wasn't on Star Trek. And that's unfortunate. And it may still have. Because, I mean, a number of people did know him, but I just don't know.
NMR Jess ends by saying that she believes Anthony Rapp and supports him, as do we. But as for why he went public with his tale about sexual assault from Kevin Spacey now, I think having the voice that Star Trek Discovery has given him is important. I, too, had never heard of him before this show. I think the larger context, though, might have been that there were so many other allegations being made and so many other people coming forward with their own truths, especially around Harvey Weinstein, that I think we are now finally creating a culture where it is slightly safer for people to come forward and share these truths.
For sure, this whole movement was started before Star Trek, or at least before he did.
Right. And so you said that it might not have gotten as much press if he was not on Star Trek. And I agree with that, but I don't think that influenced him coming forward. I think he would have done so regardless, thanks to precedents that were recently set, and that Discovery gave him a voice to lend weight to his story and made it more powerful and more important. I don't think Kevin Spacey would have responded the way he did if Rapp was not on Star Trek.
Possibly. Correction, Anthony Rapp actually did mention this in the past, but he never named Kevin Spacey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was always a mystery on who he was talking about.
Yeah, I think when Anthony Rapp went public, some of his former co-workers and castmates came forward and said, yes, he has told us this story before. This is not something new he's making up now.
Right.
However, I will object to part of NMR Jess's question that Anthony Rapp shared his story of sexual assault at the height of Star Trek Discovery's popularity. I would qualify that by saying the height to date of the show's popularity. I think we are just scratching the surface of how awesome and popular this show is going to be.
Yes. Hopefully the second half continues on this amazing trend.
Because otherwise, it's all downhill from here, and I don't want to face that possibility.
I don't want that.
No.
But there would nowhere in the mirror universe.
We have another question from Reddit user El Sabor Asiatico, who asks, what exactly happened to Burnham's birth parents? I believe we've been told so far that they were killed during a Klingon attack on a human Vulcan outpost, but I don't think we've been told who her parents were, what they were doing on the outpost, what the nature of the outpost was, or any details about the attack, end quote. And that's true. All of that has been made intentionally vague, and I'm not sure how much it matters. I don't think Star Trek is pulling a page from the Star Wars playbook where everybody's parents matter or are important or are related. I don't think we're going to find out that, oh my God, Burnham's parents were related to this captain, this admiral, this android that we see 100 years later. I think it's, in a way, bad enough that she's being raised by Spock's parents, which we've never heard about before. The rest of it, I don't think it matters, to be honest. What about you, Brie?
I don't think it will matter in the end. If they ever do fill in that gap of who they were, it'll be far into the future, but I don't know if it's going to matter story-wise who they were. I mean, of course, parents matter, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think they kept it vague on purpose. However, we can infer some ideas on what they were doing and where they were, why they were, when they were killed. It seems like, so it was a human Vulcan outpost, we know that. So at this point in the future, that means the humans and Vulcans have either built outposts or research facilities on some distant planet, and it must have been somewhere near the Klingon border. Because why would the Klingons raid it? So it could have been anything from like a listening post. It could have been a cultural research kind of thing, or just general scientific mission. But obviously it was near Klingon space, and the Klingons felt in danger from them. I mean, so it's hard. There's not much to grasp, but we can kind of make some inferences. We can infer some things.
I'm reminded of Seven of Nine's parents, who were very important, but only in the context of what they were doing and how and where they died. Their actual names and identities were pretty irrelevant. I think we may see some more details about Burnham's parents, but really only as they relate to her on an episode-by-episode basis. For example, on Quantum Leap, we didn't really get to know much about Al, except when it was relevant to that episode. When Sam leapt into Jimmy, who had Down syndrome, that's when we found out that Al had a sister who had Down syndrome. And we never knew this before or afterward. But it was relevant to that episode because it gave the players a personal stake in making sure everything worked out well. So if there is an opportunity for Burnham to become more invested in a situation in a future episode because it ties into her past, we'll find out about that. But I don't think who her parents are and where she comes from are going to be that important.
And if it ever does, oh boy.
Oh, you.
Ha!
I want to see Porthos leaping through time and space to put right what once went wrong.
Eating cheese that was not eaten.
That's right. And then in the final episode, he's reunited with his master. And together they cross that rainbow bridge. Aww.
Maybe in Star Trek 2009, Porthos his prized beagle was
oh no!
Beamed somewhere. Maybe he had a spore jump to a different time in space.
That's right. Scotty beamed the beagle somewhere and it never came back. It could be anywhere, including bouncing through time. If we can have a good leaper and an evil leaper, why not a canine leaper? Aw.
Kids, ask your parents about Quantum Leap.
Have you had the talk with your children about Quantum Leap? All right. I think that brings us to the last question, which is from NMR Jess. And you want to take this one, Bree?
Yeah, she posits Star Trek series always have themes that reflect or address issues in the era in which it was made. TOS had race as a common trope or storyline. TNG mentioned drugs every now and then. And have we seen anything in Discovery that is a commentary on current culture? She goes out to suggest PTSD, ongoing war, and same-sex relationships. If there are any themes in Discovery, I think you hit them spot on, to be honest. These are big themes in our culture right now. From going through trauma, or the almost seemingly never-ending state of war we are in, and the non-binary direction of, or at least it's not black and white when it comes to gender as well. Life isn't. And this seems to touch on all of those. That's what I got there, yeah.
I think this show is doing a better job of demonstrating PTSD. The only other time I can think of seeing it was in the DS9 episode Hard Time, which was amazing. It's where Miles O'Brien spends 20 years in prison in his head, kind of like how Picard lived an entire life in The Inner Light. When O'Brien comes out of that prison, he is dramatically changed, and he has a really hard time acclimating back to life with his wife and children. And toward the end of the episode, he nearly commits suicide because he just cannot reintegrate into society after 20 years in prison. But then, after that episode was over, I didn't see any long-term repercussions on O'Brien. He didn't seem like a harder, steelier, colder character. I felt like there was an opportunity for major, long-lasting character development after the episode Hard Time. I don't felt we saw it.
Yeah, the Deep Space Nine had a trope of everything sucks for Chief O'Brien. Like, in every season, pretty much, he had an episode where something horrible happened to him. And he didn't seem to change much for it. However, there was another episode later on in the series that came up with trauma and PTSD. It was after Nog was lost the leg in the siege of AR-558. We had an entire episode dedicated to him recovering after getting a new leg. It's Only a Paper Moon in the 7th season. He lived in 1950s Vegas with Vic Fontaine.
A lot of DS9 was all about the Dominion War, so it makes sense that they would address PTSD. So you're right. We have seen this on Star Trek before, and it has been done well. And there are long-lasting repercussions because Nog's episode that you just mentioned was set quite a time after he actually lost the leg. They were separate episodes. It's still too soon to say whether or not we have any long-term story arcs like that in Discovery. And I think in the first 9 episodes where they're so busy setting up the characters, the subterfuge, the plots, I don't know that they've had much opportunity to address this. Like the second episode with Harry Mudd. Oh, that was a social commentary on not messing with the temporal time stream. I think it was a fun episode. It copied a trope that we see in other shows and movies like Groundhog Day. But it wasn't really trying to say something per se, except that in the future there's still beer pong.
So maybe it's too soon to say themes, but they have definitely touched on relevant topics of the day.
Yeah, I mean, unlike other shows, Discovery is not yet about interacting much with external culture. Certainly the Klingons, there's a lot of that, but it's not really a show about Discovery per se, despite the name. There was on Deep Space Nine a lot of Discovery with the Bajorans, the Prophets, the Changelings, the Jem'Hadar. And even the Ferengi. There was a lot of intercultural interaction happening, and that was a good opportunity to give us that lens through which to view social issues. Right now in Discovery, it's pretty much self-contained because everything happens pretty much on the ship Discovery, and they don't have representatives from other cultures beaming aboard to go on diplomatic missions like TNG did. So they really can't interact with anybody yet.
It's true, and when the show focuses mostly on Michael Burnham and less on the ship, it's just not going to happen as often.
So that's it for our questions. The one question we didn't get was how they can invent a mushroom drive that we never see in any of the future Star Trek shows that have aired to date. Is that something we want to try to address?
Oh, yeah. We don't know that we haven't seen it, though.
What?
Section 31 has their ways of traveling around by the time we get to Deep Space Nine era. That it's possible it's being used by them.
Do you think that if Section 31 had such a massive tactical advantage that they could have used against the Dominion, they would have kept it to themselves?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of holes in the hypothesis. Like it's just maybe we've seen various versions of it, or maybe we've got the long range transporters from Star Trek Into Darkness. They could use a few things, but really we haven't seen it nor ever heard of it because obviously it didn't exist in the writing room. But something happens where they don't use it, and it probably has to do with this, whatever is going to happen to Stamets.
Let's say that where Discovery jumped to at the end of the last episode is someplace that they never come back from, and that Starfleet has lost their only mushroom drive. Does that mean that they would not be able to recreate it? I mean, granted, you need to find a tardigrade, because they don't have any other individuals with whom they've experimented with DNA eugenics and the like, but could they recreate the mushroom drive without Discovery?
Oh, they totally could, if as long as the research is still somewhere, because they were playing with jumping before the tardigrade, and they had all the mushrooms or whatever like that. They could find another one, I'm sure.
Well, the mushrooms are the fuel, but you still need a navigator, and they were not making very successful jumps prior to that. I mean, remember what happened to their sister ship?
Yeah. So either for some reason they've locked all the research onto both the Glenn and the Discovery, or something about Stamets is required. And if he's gone, they're never going to recreate it.
Yeah, there must be some reason why Starfleet, I think they had to consciously choose not to pursue research on this, and I don't know what that would be. I could imagine if it was an ethical dilemma about experimenting on tardigrades that they might loosen those regulations and restrictions if it meant winning the Dominion War, and we never saw that happen. Or if it meant, for example, bringing Voyager home. Yeah,
the ethical implications must be big there. I mean, except for Admiral Pressman making on the phase cloak, the Federation didn't continue working on cloaking devices either.
Right, not until All Good Things, when the Enterprise decloaked.
Right, and that was also a general future.
Right, that was a timeline that will not come to pass.
Yeah. And so apparently they hold their ethics pretty strongly in some regards, if they never do build another spore drive.
Do you think it's possible that somehow this entire series is not going to fall into the continuity of the other Treks, and that's why the mushroom drive doesn't exist?
I think it will. It's possible if Discovery keeps all their research on Discovery alone, it's possible that the current USS Discovery is destroyed at some point and they have to rebuild it. I mean, it happened on Deep Space Nine.
What happened on DS9?
The Defiant was destroyed and they got the USS Valiant and then renamed it.
Oh, that's right. So what are you saying will happen to the Discovery? How does that tie into our timeline?
Oh, if all the research is on Discovery, perhaps it's the reason why we don't see the spore drive in the future is all the research was destroyed with Discovery.
I would be surprised if Starfleet didn't have extensive backups and archives of their most prized ship.
I would be too. But I'm just throwing things out there to see what sticks.
Yep, just brainstorming. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of Discovery, it turns out that it was all just a giant holodeck simulation being run by Riker.
I'm just saying that Bob Newhart wakes up.
Right. And you should really wear more sweaters, Bree. Just saying. Yeah, anything is possible on Discovery, so let's just leave it at that, and we will find out at the end of the series. Hopefully it won't be canceled abruptly, and they won't have an opportunity to tie all these loose threads together, and we'll find out what happens.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for all the questions, dear Reddit users, as well as NMR Jess. It was a lot of fun brainstorming about what we've witnessed in the last 9 episodes. I think this is also a good time to go back and rewatch the episodes with the context of what happens in future episodes, now that we have that. And in the meantime, we'll continue airing Transporter Lock with a variety of other fun episodes. I think we're done theorizing between now and when the next episode airs, but we'll have other content that we can share with our listeners.
Yes, so stay tuned. Is that a phrase people use anymore, Ken? Stay tuned.
I don't think they need to adjust the frequency of their podcatcher.
And don't change the dial.
Yeah. we control the horizontal and the vertical.
Anyway, don't change that channel.
Right. Same Star Trek time, same Star Trek channel.
See you next time.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter at TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.
The flavor Asian? What? The Asian flavor? That's what their name means.
Have you tasted the Asian flavor, Sabriel?
Yeah, what the hell?